Alright, so today in the shop, we're getting the Kubota ready for the spring and summer cutting season. I've got a BX 2200 Kubota front wheel drive tractor. Never mind the cat, that's his spot he likes to lay. It's an early 2000s model, and I got a 60-inch mower deck and the shaft bearings for the blades. Probably can't hear that probably, but anyway, the bearings have been pretty rough on them, and the old belt shot. So got new bearings and a new belt. Got them off of Amazon, and the bearing kit replacements. Of course, they're all from overseas. It says assembled in the United States. That's good. The bearing kits got the two upper and lower bearing, and then the seals for upper and lower. They were $35 a piece. And then the belt, I believe it was $65 for it. And I figured I'd just give you a little rundown of how these go together and come apart. So you've got your upper pulley, double pulley, and then on the bottom side, this is where your blades would be. And you've got the shaft comes down through. Now, what you do to get these off, of course you take your belt off and all that good stuff, take your blades off. You take this nut off of the shaft, and this is a tapered shaft that the pulley sets on. You get that nut off, take your pulley off, and that whole shaft drops out through the bottom. And then you need to pay attention on the seals. Got it set up here. This is the old one I took out of there. There's actually two different seals. The upper seal has a lip on it, and then the lower seal is just smooth, because this seal actually slides up further into that housing, and then this upper seal, it just sits on top of the housing. So you have your upper seal, your upper bearing, then you have a bushing, and then you have your lower bearing and your lower seal. And like I said, I've already taken the nut off of this one, and you take that apart, and there's your, actually it's not a tapered shaft, it's a hexagon shaft. So the pulley will never slip on the shaft. So yeah, there's the seal, the upper seal sitting right there. Then you got your upper bearing, your bushing, lower bearing, and your lower seal. And this is part of the shaft here. That's all made as one piece. So then I gotta get that, both sides of that done, get that put back together, and then of course they have grease zerks on them, so you can grease them. The new bearings have some grease in them. They're not a sealed bearing, they're an open bearing, so you can grease that. And then when I get ready, I got to do the belt, and of course you got to take off this bracket in order to get the belt off and on. So you have to take these two bolts out, and you got two bolts here that you got to drop out through the bottom, take this bracket out of your way, and then you can fish the new belt through, put that back on, and then you can wind everything back through and put it back together. It's kind of checking. Well, my idler pulley's good and tight. It's not loose, not making any noise. And where the bearings ride in, they look real good. So I don't think I'll have to worry about replacing the housing or anything. That's one thing on this older Kubota for sure. They had everything's greasable. So your blade bearings are greasable. Of course, this is a gear case, so it rides in gear oil. And the idler pulley is greasable. The U-joints are all greasable. And even the tilt back here for rough ground is it's greasable. So Kubota was thinking there when they made these. I don't know how the newer ones are. I've heard a lot of people kind of complain about the quality of the newer ones. But this older one, like I said, it's an early 2000s model. It is definitely made well. So I'll work on getting these put in, and I'll talk to you later. All right. I got the new bearings put in, new seals put in. They just tap right into place. They're not real difficult to do. So then you got your shaft with a fly on it. There we go. Anyway, you put your shaft back through. I like to put a little grease down here on the end where the seals go. And that sits right up in there. And then you get your pulley, your double V pulley. There again, I like to put a little grease on the part where the seal goes. I'll hold that in with my knee since I'm doing this one-handed. Get turned here. And that goes right on there like that. And then you get your flat washer, lock washer, and nut. And you put them on. And you just snug it all up. I'm sure there's a torque spec you're supposed to go to. I just go until I won't go no more. All right. Okay, something I did forget to mention, and I need to because I forgot myself. This pulley has a couple of notches in it. And those are so that the grease can actually flow down into your bearings. So when you're putting this back together, you need to make sure that that notch, there's one on each side. So one of those two notches needs to line up with this hole that's in the shaft. And it's kind of hard to see because it's full of grease, but there's actually a hole right there. The grease starts on this end, you put your grease gun fitting on there, pump your grease in, and it squirts out through and fills down into your shaft and lubes your other bearing too. I actually forgot to pay attention to that on this one that I put in a minute ago. So I had to take it back apart, and I'm going to line it up and put it back together. So that's something you need to really pay attention to for. Otherwise, because this pulley actually goes down further on the shaft, and if you don't have that lined up, it will close that off and you will not be able to grease your bearings. So something to pay attention. Make sure you get lined up right. Like I said, I didn't do it the first time. So I'm glad I caught myself. And this pulley really needs to be replaced. You can see there's grooves in here from the old seal. The old seal has two ribs in it, and they've been rubbing on there. This side had been making a lot of noise before I got it. It was missing a grease zerd on the end, and I would say that this shaft had been ran dry for quite some time, and you can kind of tell by the pitting here on the shaft and the grooves in the pulley. Like I said, I really ought to buy a new pulley because that should be smooth. If you look over here on the other one, it's got marks from where I just had the seal on there, but it's not grooved like that one. But I'm going to pretend I didn't see that, and we'll put her back together, and we'll just keep putting grease to it. You can tell from the bottom side of the pulley there's grease all over it. So the old seal had been pretty worn and was pushing grease out. But hopefully we're going to get this all back together, and you can see better on this shaft. There's that hole I was talking about. So I'll get this all back together the proper way, and then I'll kind of bring you back when I'm getting ready to get the belt done. Thanks. All right. Now we're getting ready to put the blades on the mower deck, on the spindles. And there's, on these Kubota mower decks, at least ways on this particular model. I don't know how the newer ones are. There's my model number of this one. Like I said, this is an early 2000s model. You have, that's quite a few things you got to put on the shaft. First one is a dust cover. This one's beat up pretty good, but it'll still work. And then you have 3 washers. 2 of them are flat washers that just have a round hole in them, but they are cone shaped. They have a bit of a dish to them. Both of them do. They need to go on after you put your blade on. So you have your dust cover, and you have your blade, goes on. Then you have these 2 flat washers. And you need to make sure when you put them on that they are coned a certain way. You want it to be out toward the nut or the bolt. That way this acts as your lock washer. So when you put that on there, and it's also a slip device, a clutch is basically what that is. Because right now this blade just spins freely on that shaft without the shaft turning. What makes the whole mess turn together is this washer is hexagon, and so is the end of the shaft. So you have your dust cap, your blade, 2 dished washers, flat washers, and then you have this big washer here. And you want to make sure that it's lined up with the shaft. I kind of screwed up one of the shafts. I didn't have everything lined up, and I snugged it down, and it wasn't right. And I could tell when I started running the machine. And then you have your bolt that goes in there. So like I said, you want to make sure everything's lined up like it needs to be. Some people might want to put a little anti-seize on the bolt. I don't do that. If I can get the dang thing to start. Of course, you don't want to start right off the bat. There we go. So, then you run that down and you tighten it up. And then that is what locks everything into place. See, you can spin that shaft with it loose. So if you hit something, it will slip and hopefully not break anything. But once you snug that bolt down, it's extremely hard for it to slip. So you have to hit something really hard. But that's how all 3 of them go. I'm working on getting them put back on, getting them tightened up. I've got the new belt put back on. You take these 2 bolts out all together. These are actually studs. So you take these nuts off. I actually just took one nut off and loosened the other one and was able to get this bracket out of the way. And then you can get your belt on and off and put the new belt back on. And then tighten everything up real good. I already got some grease on my belt. That's not good. But yeah, I've got, I don't know, can't hear it now. But it's nice and quiet and smooth. Before it was grumbling and rumbling. Making all kinds of racket. So hopefully this will get things a lot quieter when I'm mowing. And a lot smoother. There was some pretty good vibration in the machine before. I still got to get those greased. My grease gun's out of grease. Imagine that. So I'll have to run to town and get some grease. And get those all greased up. And then I'll be all ready for spring mowing. Yippee. Alright guys, thanks.